Okay, everybody, we're going to keep going with our lesson on equations and formulas. This is lesson 2. We're going to get into some more advanced tools in Excel here in lesson 2. And our agenda is we're going to start off talking about advanced operators, essentially mathematical operators other than addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. I'll go through where you can find all those on your keyboard so you know how to use them. And that'll lead us into our discussion of equations. We talked a little bit about how equations are constructed in the previous lesson, but we had some pretty simple equations. I want to talk about some more complicated equations and specifically the PEMDAS rules, which you're probably familiar with from algebra class, but I want to show you how those work in Excel. And then we'll move on and we'll talk about formulas as well. And we'll just touch on 3 categories of formulas. There are many more that we could talk about, but I think these 3 you'll find really helpful. All right, so right here. Okay, so this is just some sample data. So the first thing that I want to go through that's pretty straightforward is just where all your operators are. So for example, if I wanted to have, just the number 3 and the number 5, right? Those are my 2 operators, or my 2 numbers rather. If I wanted to add those up, the addition sign is on your keyboard just to the left of the backspace key. So if I wanted to add these up right here, again, if I want the answer to go here, click on the cell where you want the answer to go and hit my equal sign. And I'll click in this cell and then shift and the equal sign. There's my plus, and then I'll click in this cell. And there we go. Okay. Now I have, if I want to do minus, the minus sign is just to the left of that button, so it's 2 buttons to the left of backspace. Your multiplication sign is shift and the number 8. And then your division sign is shift and the question mark. It's the slash towards the bottom of your keyboard just to the left of the shift key itself. You also have the ability to use an exponent. So if I wanted to, I'll just get rid of this. If I wanted to raise this cell to the power of this cell, if I wanted to raise 3 to the power of 5, same deal. I would click in the cell where the answer is going to go, hit my equal sign, click my first cell, and then to do my exponent, it's going to be shift and the number 6. All right, so there's my exponent sign right there. Click on my second cell, and there you have it. There's 3 raised to the power of 5. So fairly straightforward, and just take some practice to get used to using those. All right, I'm going to clear this data out. All right, so back to our agenda. So there's some of our advanced operators with square roots. Now, as we talk about parentheses, I'm going to bring that in with our discussion of equations. So let's say that I wanted to take these 3 initial heights and I wanted to find the average. Now, there's a formula that does that for us, but for the sake of learning, let's say I wanted to do it using an equation. So I'm going to click in the cell where I want the answer to go, right? Like always, hit my equal sign, and then I'm going to say this cell plus, that's again shift and the equal sign, plus this cell, plus this cell. And then I know that there are 3 variables here, so I'm just going to divide that by 3. And you'll see I get my enter sign. And what you're going to find is that is not probably what we were imagining the average was going to be, right? Because we have 3 numbers, all of which are lower than 0.75, yet our average is 1.58 and so forth. So that doesn't seem right. Well, here's the problem. I didn't use parentheses. So just like you would in algebra class, we go back to PEMDAS, right? So PEMDAS is parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. So that's the order that takes precedent. So what happened in this example is because division comes before addition, Excel automatically divided cell C5, right, this guy right here, automatically divided that cell by 3, took that answer, and then added that to C4 and C3. All right. So instead of these 3 added together and then that sum divided by 3, you've got these 2 numbers added to the product of C5 and C3. So how should we do this properly? All right, start from scratch. Click in the cell where you want the answer to go, equal sign. And now I'm going to group these three using my parentheses. So the left parenthesis is shift and the number 9. And then I'm going to click on this cell, plus this cell, plus this cell. And then you always got to close out your parentheses, right? So then shift and 0 closes out my parentheses. Now I can type divided by 3, and that looks a little bit more like it. So the parentheses, just like in algebra, if you're going to express it correctly, you have to make sure that the parentheses are where they need to go. Otherwise, the order of operations is going to put multiplication, division before addition and subtraction. So that's something that we definitely want to keep in mind. Okay, next thing I want to talk about, so that brings us into equations. Now I want to move on and talk about some of these more advanced formulas. Formulas, as I said in the previous lesson, are really helpful if you can find a formula that does what you need it to do. So it just so happens that there's a formula called average that we can use that would have done all that work for us. So just to go through that as an example, first click on the cell where I want the answer to go. And I don't have to type the equals here, but I need to go up to the ribbon, click on the formulas tab. All right, and then I want to go to math and trig. Oops, I'm sorry. I want to go to more function statistical. That's what I want. All right, so let me take that from the top. Click on the cell where you want the answer to go. Formulas, more function statistical, and here's average. All right, so I'm going to click average. That brings us this box that lets us decide what the arguments are for the formula. Right? What cells are we working with? So we're just going to use number 1. Very rarely do you need to use these additional numbers. I can give you an example of when you might do that, but for now, we'll just stick with this one. I'm going to clear out what's in there, and then with the cursor in this field, I'm going to go back to my workbook, highlight the 3 cells I want to average. You'll see it gives you the values that it pulls, and then it gives you this preview of what the answer is going to be. So if you have a sense of what it should be, right, you can look here and make sure that you did it correctly. If you have a good idea that 0.65 seems about right, then that's great. If this was some outrageous number, like 1.58, you know maybe we grabbed the wrong cells. All right, so I'll click 8. That gives me my answer. And then remember, when you use cells, what's great about using cells is that this becomes dynamic. It changes when we change the value. So if I go in here and make this 0.7, you'll see that this changes along with it. All right, so that's really helpful. We have all of our statistical tools at our disposal. So if I want to, I'll get rid of our average here. If I want to find, let's say, function statistical, let's say that I want to find the median. I can find the median number, right? Median, highlight these guys, gives us the median. If I had a set of numbers and I had some repeating numbers, right? Let's say, let me just go here and put in a couple. Okay. If I wanted to find what's the mode, right? What's the most common number? You can go to statistical mode, and then I'm gonna again highlight what I want to look at using my answer, and you'll see that shows me that's the number that comes up. Okay, so a couple different options with statistics that you can use here as well. Next thing I want to talk about are text formulas. These are not going to be helpful with math, but where text formulas can be helpful is if you're doing a lot of repeated text entry. So here's an example of what I mean. Let's say that here's a blank workbook. Let's say that I want to I use this when we do email addresses at Wayland. So let's say that I have a couple of new students, right? I have John Smith, and his alias is J Smith, and then I have Susie Jones, S Jones, and then I have David Vargas, right? D Vargas. And let's say that I have 20 more of these. Well, instead of doing J Smith and then having to type out jsmith@wayland.org, sjones@wayland.org, it would be nice if I could just combine what's in this with a constant, right, at wayland.org. Well, there's a formula called concatenate that lets us do that. So let's say that I want to put his email address right here. Right, I'll click right up here in B1, and then on my formulas tab, you'll see if I go to text, it's about the fifth down, concatenate. Click on concatenate, and this is almost like addition, but with text. So the first thing I want to have in my text is the name, in this case, J. Smith, right? So keep in mind that as you go down the list, it's going to read left to right. So if I want to be J. Smith and then at Wayland.org, I would put J. Smith in text 1, at Wayland.org in text 2. If I put at Wayland.org up here, it would be at Wayland.org, J. Smith. Okay. Text 2 is going to be a constant, right? It's not going to be something that changes based on cells. So I'm just going to type at Wayland.org, right? And now when I click OK, you'll see it creates that text for me. And then just like we did with the other formulas, I can click and drag that down. You'll see it does the whole list for me. So again, if I had 25 students who needed emails, I could just combine all those down, right? We can do the same thing with 2 cells. If I had, and I wanted to combine his first and last name in one cell, right? I could take Jimmy and then Smith, click where I want the answer to go, text, concatenate, text 1 is Jimmy, text 2 is Smith. Now you'll see from my preview, the problem here is that it's Jimmy Smith. It runs it all together. I don't have a space between them. Well, they say the problem with computers, they do exactly what you tell them to do. So what I actually need to do is account for that space. So I'm going to get rid of this here. I'm just going to type a space, and then in text 3, I'll do Smith. You'll see that'll combine them into Jimmy Smith, which is helpful. This lesson will continue to cover equations and formulas, and specifically we're going to cover advanced operators, which are mathematical operators other than plus and minus and equals and addition and multiplication and division. That will bring us into some more advanced rules with equations, which are the mathematical operations you construct yourself. And then we'll talk about a couple formulas, a couple families of formulas, statistical and then logical, which I think will be very helpful for you in science class. Okay, so one thing that I think is helpful is to just go over where a lot of the math operators are on your keyboard. So let me just make sure I've got this lined up. So addition is right here by the backspace key, as is equals. The resolution is not great, but that's where equals is. Minus is right here beside it. Multiplication is shift and the number 8. Okay, let me actually draw on this for you. So here's multiplication. Right, here's addition, subtraction. Okay, division is down here. Right, it's the slash. So those are your ones that you're probably used to. One that you'll use, especially in this class, from my understanding, is the exponent. So if I want to use an exponent, I'm going to use shift and then the number 6. Okay. So here's what that might look like in an Excel workbook. So here's my Excel workbook, and let's say that I want to have the number 5, and then I have the number 2, and I just want to see what is 5 raised to the power of 2. Okay, so again, click in the cell where I want the answer to go, just like we did before. Start with my equal sign, just like we did before. I'm going to click in the first cell, which is A1, and then I'm going to do Shift 6. There's my exponent symbol, and then I'm going to click on the cell for 2, and then I'll hit Enter, and there's my answer. Right, so it's 5 raised to the power of 2, or 5 squared, as it is. And again, because it's using cells, we're not actually typing in the numbers. This answer becomes dynamic. So if I want to say, all right, well, what is 7 squared? I can change this to 7, and it gives me that answer too. Conversely, there's also a formula that will give us the square root of a number. So if I have a number, in this case, let's say I just want to use this one to make it simple, and I want to know what the square root is, I'm going to click in the cell where I want the answer to go. I'm going to go to the Formulas tab on my ribbon, go to Math and Trig. Got a lot of different formulas to choose from here. I want to scroll down, and it's SQRT, square root. Select that as my formula. The argument is going to be whatever cell I want to find the square root of. So in this case, it's this cell A3. Click there. Gives me my preview for the number 7. Looks right. I can guesstimate that that's correct. And then I'll click OK. There you have it. There's the square root. So we've talked about here using an equation to create a square root, or I'm sorry, to square a number, and then here we've used a formula to find the square root of a number. Okay, so that was agenda item number 1 under advanced operators. Next thing we're going to talk about is a little bit more advanced stuff when it comes to equations, and specifically this PEMDAS rule set, which you're probably familiar with from algebra, but just to review it, the P is for parentheses, the E is for exponents, M is for multiplication, D is for division, A is for addition, S is for subtraction. And that's the order of operations in which mathematical operations will be executed in Excel. So it's important in math class, and it's really important in Excel. Let me give you an example. So I'm going to go here and here we go. So let's say that I wanted to find the average of these, in this case, 8 numbers, right? So click on the cell where I want the answer to go, and I'm going to type my equal sign, and that starts the process. Now there is a formula, in all fairness, called average that'll do this for us, but for the sake of teaching you about the PEMDAS situation, I think this is a good way to do it. So I'll click on this cell, plus this cell, plus this cell. All right, I'm down the line. Okay, so I get to the end. I have all my cells added up. I get to the end, and then I do divided by 8, because I have 8 cells that I'm averaging. And that gives me a pretty outrageous answer, right? 392.875. I don't have any numbers here even over 100, so what did I do? What I did wrong is I didn't include parentheses. So if you look up here at the text of my equation, you'll see that I have all this addition, and then I end with the division piece. And because the D in PEMDAS comes before the A, the D for division comes before the A for subtraction, what Excel is going to do is it's going to first perform this operation and then add everything else up. So instead of adding all these numbers up and dividing by 8, it's going to add the product of B9 and the number 8 to all the other cells. That's not what we want. So what I want to do instead, I'll just start from scratch. Again, click in the cell where you want the answer to go, equal sign, and now I want to do, whoops, sorry about that. Now I want to do an open parentheses, and your open parentheses is shift and the number 9, okay? Open parentheses, now I can go through, add all these guys up. Right, here's my full equation, and then I want to close the parentheses, right? So my right parentheses is shift and the number 0 on my keyboard. Got all that. Now I'm going to divide by 8. So I'm adding all these numbers up first and then dividing that sum by the number 8. Hit enter. There's my answer. That's quite a bit more reasonable. All right. Now I said that there's there are some formulas that can be really helpful here. There is a formula called average. So if I don't want to construct the equation myself, I just want to use the formula, what I'm going to do in this case is click in the cell where I want the answer to go to the Formulas tab. On the Formulas tab, I want to go to More Functions, Statistical, and I'm going to choose Average. Now, just like we did with sum in the previous lesson, the first thing I have to do is make sure that I have the right arguments. I have the right cells or the right constants that I want to average. So I'm going to clear out whatever's in there. I want to average up these numbers. So with the blinking cursor in number 1, highlight these cells. All right. You can see it's B2 to B9, right? B2 to B9, that works. Preview looks about right. And I click OK, and there you have it. Okay, so I can say that that is my average or my mean if I want to use more specific mathematical language. I have similar functions for mode, for example. So if I want to find the mode, same deal. Let's say I want to put the mode right beneath the average, rather. Again, click on the cell where I want the answer to go. More functions, statistical. Scroll down, and I have mode.mul. Click on that function, or formula rather. Make sure my blinking cursor is up here. Highlight the cells that I want to use. Looks good to me. Click OK. There's my mode. If I want to do median, right? Same deal. Click where I want the answer to go. More functions, statistical. Scroll down a bit, and here's median. Same deal. Clear this out. Highlight the cells that I want to find the median for. Click OK. There's my answer. Okay, so all of that using the formulas. When you have a formula that does what you want to do, it saves a tremendous amount of time in trying to construct the equation yourself. You could do it. You could figure it out, but this is much more efficient. Okay, so there's some statistical formulas that I think are helpful. Some others that are good, I think. So we're down here now in our plan, are what are called logical formulas. And here's what I mean. Let's say that, for example, I want to count up all the times that the result was, let's say, greater than 60. Okay. So I want to say number greater than 60. Okay. Click in the cell where I want the answer to go. And there's actually a formula called COUNTIF. And you give it a range of cells, and it will count the number of times where a cell meets a certain criteria. Right? Now, if I just want to count, I've got that too. That's another formula that just counts however many cells you have. But in this case, I want to count if it meets a certain criteria. So click in the cell where I want the answer to go. This time I'm going to go up to math and trig. Oops, no, I don't want to do that. I want to do statistical again. There we go. I'm sorry. So more functions, statistical, count if. So the first thing it's going to ask me for is the range. So where's the range that I'm looking at? Where do I want to do my counting? And just like before, I want to use these cells. So I'm going to click right here, right where the blinking cursor is, highlight the cells that I want to use. And then for my criteria, I can give it a number of different things. In this case, I want to say greater than 60. Right? And when I click greater than 60, you'll see that it gives me an answer of 3. And then if I eyeball it up, you'll see indeed I've got 65, 76, 50, 65, 76, 78, and those are my 3, right? So I click OK, and that tells me how many numbers are greater than 60. Now, if I go in and change, right, if I make this 65 instead of 45, that number is going to change too. It's going to recognize that there are now 4. Let's say that I also want to put a note next to any cell where it's greater than 60. I want to say if it's greater than 60, I want to have a mark there. So let's say I want it to just say greater than 60. So I'll click on the cell where I want the answer to go. Now I'm going to go up to logical. And under logical, I actually have a formula called if. Right? So the logical test is basically, what are you testing for? What are you trying to see? Right? Is it greater than something? Is it equal to something? Is it less than something? What's the story? So in this case, again, I want to do greater than 60. My value, if true, and I need to have a cell to go with that. So in this case, first I'll click on my cell. Now I'll say greater than 60. Okay. So let me go through that again because I made a mistake. So I need a cell, or I need a number. So in this case, the cell that I'm testing is this guy, B2. Click here, greater 60. The value of true is what am I going to do if it's true? What happens if it passes the test? The value of false is what do I do if it doesn't pass the test? So I'm just going to say my value of true is greater than 60. And all that is, that's just text, right? It's just going to be a text that's going to flash up. And then my value of false is less than 60. Okay, click OK. And you'll see in this case, it's less than 60 because 45 is less than 60. If I drag it down, it fills all those cells in for me, right? So if I made this 75, that changes it to greater than 60. So you can play around with that, and that's really helpful, especially if you're looking at a large set of data and you want to pick out some really particular results.